How many elves does it take to change a light bulb? One, two, three? The answer is none. They'll just sit there in the darkness, singing about the beauty of the light that was. That's a joke that was inspired by Tolkien's myth of the Two Trees of Valinor. The AI-generated discussion that you're about to listen to discusses my article. Is there a source for the two trees of the Valar? And the AI took some liberties in injecting some details and actually correcting my article in a couple of points. I've actually edited the article on the basis of some things that they said because they were correct and I was wrong. So once again, the LLM proves that it was trained on Tolkien materials beyond what I'm just asking it to evaluate.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. So glad you could join us. Today we're embarking on, well, a really luminous journey, actually. We're diving into one of J.R.R. Tolkien's most captivating and, let's be honest, tragic stories from his Middle-earth mythology. The tale of the Two Trees of Valinor.
It's a cornerstone of his legendarium, really.
Absolutely. And our mission today is kind of twofold. First, we want to walk through the story itself, distill the essence of this beautiful myth from the Silmarillion. And then, and this is where it gets really interesting, thanks to a fantastic article by Michael Martinez over on the Middle-earth Blog, we're going to put on our mythological detective hats.
Yeah.
And explore this really intriguing question. Is there maybe a hidden source, some forgotten legend, that might have inspired Tolkien's incredible glowing trees?
It's quite the puzzle. We'll look at the story of the trees, understand their huge significance in Tolkien's world, and then, connect some surprising dots, leads to some unexpected corners of ancient lore. It really shows how Tolkien, the master weaver he was, might have drawn inspiration.
To create something that feels so original, yet familiar somehow.
Exactly.
Deeply resonant.
Okay, so let's dive into the core story first before we get to potential sources. Before the trees themselves, way back at the dawn of the world, the Valar, these powerful sort of angelic beings, they made the world, and first they lit it with these two massive lamps, Iluin and Ormal.
That's right. One in the north, one south. A kind of primal light for the world they'd made, intended for the elves and men, the children of Iluvatar as they're called. But Melkor, Tolkien's original Dark Lord, driven by jealousy, envy, just pure covetousness, he couldn't stand that light.
Right, he hated it.
So he just smashed them, overthrew the lamps, plunged the whole world into darkness. A total catastrophe. In this act, it basically forced the Valar to pull back, to retreat west to Aman, where they set up their own blissed realm, Valinor.
And it was there, in Aman, that something truly amazing happened. Yavanna, she's like the Earth Mother figure among the Valar. She poured her power, her essence into song. And from her singing, the two trees literally grew into being. Telperion the silver and Laurel and the gold.
Just imagine that.
Yeah. Pure creation through song and light. It's beautiful.
It really is a pivotal moment. And these trees, they shone with this brilliant, pure light, but in a really unique way, a cycle. Each tree would brighten and dim over like a 12-hour period. They weren't at their peak together.
Mm-hmm.
But twice a day, for a short time, their lights would actually mingle at equal strength, silver and gold together.
Wow.
And that mingling, that became the Valar's clock in Aman, their way of measuring time with light.
So time moves on. Eventually, the elves wake up back in Middle-earth, and this awakening, it ultimately leads to this terrible war against Melkor. The Valar finally capture him, imprison him for 3 long ages.
A huge span of time.
Yeah. And after he's locked up, the Valar invite the elves to come live with them in Aman in the light of the trees. This leads to the Great Journey, but also the first big split among the elves, the Sundering. Some stayed behind, the Avari, the Unwilling. Others, the Eldar or People of the Stars, made the journey west. Many, like the Vanir and the Noldor clans, actually reached Aman and settled there.
And living there among the Noldor was Fëanor, eldest son of their king, Finwë. And Fëanor, well, he was something else. The greatest of all elves in crafts, in lore, just brilliant. And his most famous creation, also the most tragic, really, were the Silmarils, 3 jewels.
Right, Silmarils, legendary.
He somehow managed to capture the actual living light of the 2 trees inside them. They were so pure, so powerful. The Valar themselves hallowed them, made them sacred, the most treasured things the elves possessed.
You can almost feel the story shifting here, can't you? The peace can't last.
No, exactly.
Because Melkor, he's eventually released from prison, supposedly repentant, but not really. And he sees the elves living in the light treasured by the Valar, and he becomes consumed by jealousy again, and malice towards the elves because he blames them for his defeat. So he starts subtly poisoning the Noldor, spreading lies, sowing dissent, turning them against each other, even against the Valar, which leads to that famous terrible scene where Fëanor actually draws his sword on his own half-brother, Fingolfin, a huge turning point. The peace of Aman is shattered.
It really is. And the tragedy just spirals from there. Melkor, his plot's now kind of exposed. He flees. He goes south to Avathar, this wild, dark region of Oman. And there in the shadows, he finds Ungoliant.
Ungoliant. Just the name sounds creepy.
Oh, she's terrifying. An ancient primordial creature of darkness, maybe a rogue Maya, one of those lesser spirits, who just utterly hates light, craves it, wants to devour it. And Melkor makes a pact with her.
And that pact leads to the absolute worst act, the core of this tragedy. Ungoliant, with Melkor guiding her, goes to the Two Trees, and she just drains them, sucks out all their life, all their light, their very essence, leaves them as these dead, withered husks.
It's an unbelievably horrific image. Total violation.
And then right after that desecration, Melkor and Ungoliant travel north, fast, to Formenos. That's the fortress where Fëanor was living in exile after his outburst.
And this is the ultimate blow for the Noldor and for Fëanor personally. At
uh,
Formenos, Melkor kills Finwë, Fëanor's father, the king of the Noldor.
Oh man, just brutal.
Utter malice. And then, with Ungoliant's help, she was still hungry. He breaks into Fëanor's treasury and steals the silmarils, those jewels holding the tree's light, plus tons of other Noldoran treasures. And with all that loot, Melkor escapes Aman entirely, crosses the grinding ice back to Middle-earth.
Just devastating. The Valar, they're heartbroken about the trees, but they have this one desperate hope. They figure maybe if they can get the silmarils back, the light within them could revive the trees, bring them back to life.
Well, fate hope, yeah.
But it's thwarted. Melkor's already gone with the jewels, and Fëanor, now consumed by grief and rage, refuses point blank to even consider giving them up, even if they could be recovered. They're his now. Symbols of his loss and his claim.
He swears this terrible oath, binding himself and his sons to recover them at any cost.
Yeah.
It drives the entire next age of conflict.
So the pure light of the trees is gone from Aman forever. A truly dark hour.
But not quite the end of the tree's legacy. As the very last glimmers of light were fading from the dying husks, Yavanna, the Earth Mother, she sang again. A lament, maybe, and in response, each tree managed to produce one last thing. Telperion, the silver tree, bore a single silver flower, or maybe a leaf, the text varies slightly. Laurelin, the gold, bore a single golden fruit.
Ah, okay, so there was something left.
Just a fragment. The Valar took that silver flower, made the moon from it, and they assigned a Maya, Tilion, to steer it across the sky. And from the golden fruit they made the sun, entrusted it to another Maya, Arion, a spirit of fire who'd never served Melkor. She guides the sun.
And that's how the sun and moon came to be in Tolkien's world, carrying just a tiny spark of that original sacred light of the trees, starting the new cycle of day and night for Middle-earth. Wow, what a story.
It really is epic, foundational.
So, okay. That's the incredible tale from the Silmarillion. Such a unique, detailed story, right? So central to everything. Which brings us back to that question, the one Michael Martinez tackles in his Middle-earth blog article that got us started on this deep dive. Was Tolkien inspired by other myths for this? Did he ever point to a specific source for the trees?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And Martinez's take in the article is really nuanced. He makes it clear Tolkien likely pulled from lots of myths and legends for different parts of his world. He was steeped in them. But Martinez really emphasizes that for the trees themselves, their specific nature, the light cycle, the creation by song, the destruction by Ungoliant Tolkien, seems to have clearly made up many details, as Martinez puts it.
So more invention than borrowing for the trees specifically.
That's the argument Martinez makes. He says there's really nothing quite like it in the specific myths Tolkien studied, like Norse or Celtic, that directly maps onto the two trees in that way. He integrated ideas broadly, sure, but the trees themselves seem uniquely Tolkien.
Okay. But Martinez does acknowledge some echoes, right? General mythological themes that resonate, even if they aren't direct tree sources.
Oh, absolutely. And the article touches on those, like the common idea you see everywhere of gods driving chariots or sailing ships carrying the sun and moon across the sky. That's pretty universal.
Right. We see that a lot.
And Martinez points out an interesting parallel with Egyptian mythology. The Egyptian sun god, Ra, sails his barge across the sky during the day, but at night it passes through the underworld, the Duat, to emerge again in the east, which is kind of similar, thematically at least, to how in the Silmarillion, the sun vessel is guided back under the world through hidden passages from west to east each night. It's that shared pattern, that archetype, not a direct borrowing for the trees, but for the sun-moon journey, maybe.
Makes sense. And he mentions Norse mythology too, doesn't he?
Briefly, yeah. In Norse myth, you have Sol, a goddess driving the sun chariot, and Mani, a god guiding the moon. And they're constantly chased by wolves, forces of darkness trying to devour them.
Ah, like Skoll and Hati.
Exactly. So again, you see that theme. Celestial bodies, personified guides, conflict with darkness. Tolkien knew this stuff inside out. So those general ideas likely informed his thinking about his own sun and moon, even if not the trees that birthed them.
Okay, so those are general echoes. But this is where Michael Martinez's article gets really interesting, where he offers what he thinks is a much stronger candidate for a more direct, if perhaps subconscious, inspiration. He points us away from Northern Europe towards Persia.
Yeah, this is the fascinating bit. Martinez highlights a specific legend from Persian myth or folklore about two cypress trees called the Trees of the Sun and Moon.
Trees of the Sun and Moon. Okay, that sounds promising.
Right, very specific. And these trees, legend says, were planted by Zoroaster himself. So ancient and sacred. The connection is right there. Trees embodying celestial light, just like Telperion and Laurelin ultimately gave rise to the moon and sun.
And there's this amazing story connected to them involving Alexander the Great.
Yes. Martinez recounts this great anecdote. Alexander, after conquering Persia, supposedly heard about these trees and went to see them. He wanted an oracle, a prophecy about his future.
What did they tell him? Or what did it tell him?
Well, they're oracle, and in some versions, the trees themselves actually speak to him, which is incredible.
Whoa, talking trees.
Right. They reportedly told him he'd conquer India, but then die soon after, which, is roughly what happened. It adds this layer of ancient power and prophecy to the trees.
That's fantastic. And there's another historical connection Martinez brings up from Marco Polo.
Indeed. He mentions Marco Polo's account in the Book of Sir Marco Polo. Polo writes about a later Islamic ruler, the Caliph al-Mutawakkil in the 9th century. This caliph apparently heard about one of these ancient cypress trees, supposedly 1,450 years old by then, and had it cut down and shipped all the way to Baghdad.
Oh no, why?
Just wanted it maybe for building. But the story goes, soon after the tree arrived in Baghdad, the caliph was murdered by his own Turkish guards.
Wow. So like a curse or just bad karma for cutting down a sacred tree?
Exactly. It adds this sense of danger, of violating something sacred, which definitely resonates with the tragic fate of Tolkien's trees after Melkor and Ungoliant attacked them.
Okay, so how does Martinez connect this Persian legend specifically to Tolkien? Did Tolkien read Marco Polo?
Well, Martinez is careful here. He says there's no direct proof Tolkien read Marco Polo specifically looking for tree myths, but he argues it's highly likely Tolkien knew the book. It was and is a very famous work. Educated people, especially scholars of language and history like Tolkien, would likely have been familiar with it.
Plausible.
And Martinez adds another interesting, maybe circumstantial link. Tolkien visited Venice several times, and he famously identified Venice with his own city of Gondor in Middle-earth.
Right, Gondor, the kingdom known for preserving ancient lore.
Precisely. So, if Venice, a hub of trade and knowledge linking east and west where Marco Polo was from, inspired Gondor as a keeper of ancient history, Martinez suggests it's plausible that lore associated with Venice and its connections, perhaps including tales Marco Polo brought back, could have seeped into Tolkien's consciousness. And the tale of the two trees was supposedly preserved in Gondor via texts like the Thane's book. It's suggestive, if not concrete proof.
Okay, that's a neat speculative link, but then Martinez delivers the real clincher, right? The strongest piece of evidence in the article, an update he added later.
Yes, this is what really strengthens the case, I think. He talks about a Middle English poem called Kyng Alisaunder.
Kyng Alexander, same guy.
The very same. And crucially, this medieval poem explicitly includes the legend of Alexander visiting the trees of the sun and moon in India. The location shifts sometimes in the legends.
Ah, so the story was definitely circulating in medieval England.
Exactly. And here's the key. Martinez confirmed with Dr. Jane Chance, a noted scholar of medieval literature and Tolkien, that Tolkien knew the poem Kyng Alisaunder very well. It was part of his professional academic work on Middle English.
Okay, that's a direct link. Tolkien knew the story.
That's what Martinez argues. Tolkien didn't just maybe know Marco Polo, he definitely knew this medieval poem containing the core legend of the talking sun and moon trees visited by Alexander. It makes a strong case, as Martinez puts it, for this Persian Alexandrian legend being a significant direct influence on Tolkien's conception of the Two Trees.
Wow. That is a fantastic piece of detective work by Martinez. What an incredible journey for this deep dive. We went from the sheer beauty and devastating tragedy of Telperion and Lorelin in Valinor, their light, their destruction, the birth of the sun and moon, all the way to digging through ancient myths, following the clues in Michael Martinez's article, and finding this surprisingly solid connection to a Persian legend about talking sun and moon trees, preserved through Alexander the Great's stories and known to Tolkien via a Middle English poem.
It really shows how myths travel and transform, doesn't it? And how a creative genius like Tolkien could absorb these ancient fragments and weave them into something that feels completely new, yet also resonates with something incredibly old and deep within us.
Absolutely. Which kind of leaves us with a final thought, maybe something for you, our listeners, to ponder.
Yeah, think about this. How do these ancient stories pass down maybe thousands of years across different cultures, languages? How do they keep inspiring new myths? How do they result in tales like Tolkien's that feel so unique, so original in their details, but also strike that chord of profound familiarity? What is it about these deep narrative patterns?
It's truly fascinating, isn't it? That enduring power of narrative. How a master like Tolkien could tap into that deep wellspring of human myth-making to create something as epic and timeless as the tale of the Two Trees. We really hope this deep dive has shed some new light, pardon the pun, on this amazing story for you.
Hope you enjoyed the journey.
Until next time, keep exploring those hidden depths of story.